Good morning and welcome to Ask the Expert. I'm Joe Taylor. This morning, another in the ongoing series of programs presented by the Northwest Regional Key Program for Quality Early Learning. The program, through the Northwest Institute of Research, oversees a grant from the Office of Child Development and Early Learning at the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services and the Department of Education. The goal of the program is to improve the outcomes for young children as they prepare for school. John Posa from the Pennsylvania Key is the host of the program, and he's here with us throughout the series and here with us this morning. And John, who is here with us on the phone this morning?
Well, good morning, Joe, and I'm extremely pleased to welcome well-known children's author and illustrator Will Hillenbrand. And Will is has been selected as the author-illustrator of the 2016 PA One book, which is a program that the state of Pennsylvania has been operating for more than 10 years. And the name of the book that Will has authored and illustrated for 2016 is called Kite Day. And so it's just one of over 50 books that Will has done. And I wanted to welcome him to the program. Good morning.
Thank you, John. And Joe, I'm happy to be with both of you.
Well, the first thing, Will, I wanted to ask you about is, before we get into talking about the specific book, Kite Day, you kind of had an interesting background growing up and how you got into writing children's books, being, in the Cincinnati area. And tell the story about how you and your dad got together and you picked up on stories, as your dad was, I believe, a barber. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was surrounded by stories, and the barber shop was one of the places that happened. I think we may be all surrounded by stories in the sense that whenever I visit a school, in the school cafeteria, it's always very noisy because stories are being shared back and forth. But that being said, to be specific about my dad, he had a barber shop with his brother, and before that was with his father. Eventually that was with my mom. But when I was a boy, I would often take his lunch to the barber shop during the summer break. The barber shop was air-conditioned, and I would take his hot lunch. Mom would make it, and I could walk to the barber shop. It was probably about 4 blocks away. Once I delivered his lunch, often he was busy, and I would put it in a cupboard. And then, because it was nice and cool in the barber shop, I would just sit in one of the chairs, and the men that were in attendance would resume their stories. And to be specific, one of the characters, one of the barbers who was a character named Harry Wiley, an ex-Marine, and at a command of the audience of people that were in there, he might end up saying something like to his customer, because, well, I should tell you that Harry's part-time job was cutting down trees. He was a barber, but he also would cut down trees. And he might tell his customer, cutting your hair is not a lot different than cutting down trees. And that person's eyes might get a little wide. But what that made me think about in hearing, odd, well, I don't know if it's odd, but just things like that, my fertile imagination, when I got back home or in the evening when I'd sit at the kitchen table and draw, I would draw a person that had a frontal portrait of someone typically, and I would draw trees growing out of their head instead of hair. and then to top it off, I might show someone cutting that down with a chainsaw. So, it doesn't take a lot for me to be able to eavesdrop or hear things and then imagine them in a context that is familiar to me, but may not, because I don't know of other people, may not be that way for them. But that's the way it works for me.
You started drawing and writing stories, I guess, when you were 9 years old. I'm wondering now, your dad, your mom, did they take your efforts seriously, encourage you? Too often it seems parents will just say, yeah, that's nice, who's creating something, whether it's a book or a song or a dress pattern or an architectural design. What did your parents do? Did they encourage you? And what should parents do when they're presented with early childhood creativity?
Joe, that's a great question. And I think as far as my own experience with my son is, and to tell parents, is that always encourage your child's interest. Whatever your interest, your child's interested in, feed the interest and feed it, follow it, and in that course, you will learn. You will learn much more about them because that will be revealed. Now, for me, I should let you know, my parents never took me to a story hour, which wasn't their fault. I mean, there was a library within a block we could walk over, but we didn't do that. I would encourage parents to do that. I was interested in the visual world, but they didn't take me to an art museum. I took them to an art museum when I was a sophomore in college, attending an art school. With those being said, I think, Joe, the spirit, my spirit anyway, is rather undaunted. I think I just follow my own path in a very deliberate way. And often those that have a spirit like mine will do that. But and it also means that later on when you get criticism from folks, you listen, but you're not dissuaded. You follow that and you filter it, and then you apply it. As far as my parents were concerned, the things that parents have an opportunity to do is create community. And all parents have an opportunity with their children to introduce them to the communities that they value. With me, I was fortunate that I had family members, my grandmother specifically, who lived right up the street from me, and I thought all grandmothers did. My grandma Hillenbrand was the only grandparent of mine that survived into my childhood, and I loved her. I can remember, I mean, she read to me The Tale of Peter Rabbit on a rainy day before I was in school, and my parents were away, and she was taking care of, I'm the youngest of four boys, so she was taking care of us. She read to me The Tale of Peter Rabbit, and I fell into the rabbit hole. I've never forgotten it. In fact, I even traveled to Beatrix Potter's home because that experience went so deep from me. I think the power of story is well, there is power in story. We shouldn't forget that. It has great power. It may not look very powerful sitting on your tabletop or being kind of quiet and it doesn't light up, but illustrations will light up your mind. In fact, that's what the word illustration means. It means to illuminate, and it will catch your imagination and will excite it. With the context of the people that I grew up with, the context my parents created, they were all fertile for me. My mother drew for me. One evening, after she answered the telephone, and we just had one telephone. It was connected to the wall, and I was drawing this before I was in school, before kindergarten, and she ended up getting a phone call, and while she was listening to the call, she was doing something, and when she was finished with the phone call, I looked to see she had been drawing. Actually, she would call it doodling. Most people would, but when you cannot draw your own letters for your own name, and you see someone drawing flowers or rabbits or roses, it's impressive. I wanted to see what that magic was. So 2 nights later, I took the piece of paper I was drawing on, and I took it to her, and she was crocheting. And I asked her to draw for me. And John and Joe, she could have said, I've never been to art school. She could say, I'm busy. She could have come up with many reasons why not to. She could say, I don't know what to draw. But what I was asking for her, what I was asking from her, was an exchange, and that was love. I wanted to be in her arms, and this was an excuse to be that. And I also had one small demand. I wanted to see magic. And when she drew for me, she drew what she knew. She grew up in Indiana, so she drew the hills of home. She drew the woods that she walked through when she went to school and came home from school. She drew the barn, her house that always had smoke coming out of the chimney because it had a wood stove, and that's how they heated the house and heated their water and made their food. Even in the summertime, smoke came out. Then she drew a little paddock in front, and inside she drew an oval with triangle ears, square nose, straight legs, and a curly tail, and she said, "That's my pet pig, Oogie." And when I came home from school, I would feed him, and when he was a baby, I nursed him, and he got to be so big. When I did feed him when I came home from school, I could ride him around the barnyard like he was a little pony, like I was a little cowgirl, but I was a little pig girl.
Wow.
And, that was a seminal moment for me, and I don't think these kind of moments are a far reach from today's parents. It is as close as the story that you know in a welcoming lap, and the time that you have that you can give to the person you brought into the world.
Absolutely. That's such a wonderful, wonderful remembrance. Well, let's change gears a little bit and talk about the book, Kite Day. I wanted to mention that, there's a competition every year to be selected as Pennsylvania's one book for children. And obviously it's a book that whatever is selected for the year has to send a strong message, but it also has to involve something that encourages literacy and other things in children. And this year, of course, the state was looking at including important like STEM principles of science,
Right.
technology, engineering, and math. And you did that with Kite Day. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about the story and some of the things that you made sure you wanted to incorporate in it?
Well, the story is Kite Day is one of a series of books that I've done, beginning with Spring is Here, and those stories always involve a bear and a mole. And in this particular story, of course, it is the same as the series. The origin, the idea of the story comes out of my own personal experience. When my father and I would build a kite and then fly kites when I was a child, and of course in this story it's not my father or myself. I've just transferred those to these animal characters. I tried to do that book many years ago, and I did it as human figures. But after I did the bear and mole stories, I transferred it to these two characters. Now, what happens as far as there's life and books and our lives are all part of a process of things that we do build and experience. And in this book, the two come together. The wind seems to be just right on this spring day to be able to fly a kite, and a kite is an amazing experience in being able to see flight. I mean, I'm from the state of the Wright brothers, and wondering about flight, flying kites, seeing birds fly, looking into the air for inspiration it's all around. And when you hold that at the end of a string, and of course you're in Ben Franklin state, so I mean there's one with a key on it for electricity. It's exciting, and being able to do that. Now, when we had built a kite and put the tail on it and flew it, and it got so high in the sky, a storm came and took the kite, and I was heartbroken on the drive home. I was wondering where did the kite land. And in this book, I find out where that might have landed, and so will the reader when they get to the end. As far as thinking about how the book was selected, John, I don't really have much to do with how that is done. I just try to put the ingredients of a good story well told with intriguing pictures into play. And those that end up receiving it, like the good people in Pennsylvania, they're the ones who find the connections and the extensions that are embedded within. I hope that is a roundabout way of I always answer my questions in roundabout ways, but I hope that ends up suggesting an answer to you.
I hate to ask this question, but with kids spending more and more time with electronic devices, how relevant are books in kids' lives today?
They're as relevant as we make them. And I think if remember, Joe, that children, I think, are really interested in being able to have our time. A device provides a distraction. It also provides convenience. Today and I don't think it's necessarily today, but I'll just use this slang word as an illustrative point. What we have as adults is called Miller time. Now, my mother's mother was a Miller, but I'm meaning a different Miller time.
Right.
Okay.
What I mean is my time. And after a long day's work, we might think that, we deserve our own time, and that's fine. But if you have a child, you sacrifice that up. And if you give a child a device instead of your time, I mean, it's as simple as being able to say, if you were to observe a person taking their own pet, their dog, for a walk, and that person walking that dog ends up getting a phone call, that dog might start acting up because it knows that doesn't have all of your attention. That dog thought you were walking together with a dog. When you get the phone call, it knows it's no longer the primary attention. Children want our attention, but they'd also deserve our attention. They deserve our time, and time works differently for children than we as adults. So when a child has to wait 5 minutes, it's like waiting 15. And what parents can do with reading and electronic devices, and of course, it takes time to go to the library, make your collection, but it's free, and it's a great routine. It's great context. And when you spend 5 minutes, and if you don't have 5 minutes for your child, God bless you, I don't know what to tell you. But if you've got 5 minutes before they go to bed to read to them, that's like 15 minutes for them. And if you expand that over the course of a week or a month or a lifetime, you've invested that child with words, imagination, and what's most important, your precious time. And who else better to be able to be the guide to the 100-acre woods or to the Neverland? As a reader, you get to be not thinking at the end of the day of what story will I tell, but how can I bring that to life? And of course, every story has trouble in it. And you can pause at those moments and wonder what's going to happen to those characters. But you go in the trenches with that child, and everybody remembers, if they've been read by, Charlotte's Web by someone who loved them, who's cared for them, they remember tears at the end, and they've shared those together. And those are shared moments that are way beyond what electronic devices can do as a substitute. Electronic devices are here to stay, but don't let them substitute the most practicable things that we can do as humans to be absolutely in touch. And adults have their busy schedules. They're living in the future. A child lives in the present. When you read a story, you come together on the same page, and you share an experience that a child hungers for, and we do as well, which is an adventure, some life. Often in books, of course, we get adventure beyond what we can humanly experience and travel in times we can't travel to or even have any possibility. But in Gawain, in The Green Knight, we can experience an Arthurian moment. And why not? Because if we don't do it, who will?
Well said.
And these things are too good to miss.
Yep. To piggyback on that, when the PA1 book is selected, of course, there's also activity guides that the libraries get to goes with the book, and that parents can use to do practical things along the same theme of the book itself. And I know part of what you do is you go out on a tour of the book and to groups, to libraries, to childcare, preschools, and so forth. And I know you will be doing a tour for Kite Day during the Week of the Young Child, which will be in April of next year. So what can, as a suggestion, if there was a local library or preschool, in Pennsylvania that would be interested in having you, what should they do? Well,
the PA1 book puts together this tremendous guide which can lead, and I help them create some of that material. But they have experts, and they embed that with just incredibly rich and detailed information and extensions. So being able to go to their website, look up their guide, so that they can extend that is really terrific. From my experience on the tour, obviously no 2 days are alike, and nor should they be. The brilliance of the program is that the local librarian who knows their community quite well and their needs will specifically dial up a program that will be practicable for their location and their needs. And then my job is to go out into that, whether it's a Head Start program or a library, or like this last spring when I came back for the 10th anniversary, I did a reading at the School for the Blind in Pittsburgh. Those opportunities, and often in the evening programs when parents are there, and I should say in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, the evening program was for GED students and their children. Often one comment I often did receive, because I always do a live reading, is that an adult may come up and say, "Now I can read that book because you showed me how." And I'm a little surprised by that in some ways, because I don't think that I am the expert in being able to do that. I just believe that stories have power, and being able to make them come alive is what we have an opportunity to do. And in some cases, maybe it's the evidence that we don't see that very often. And what happens, though, the upside is that when you do that, you give permission to the next reader to be able to do the same thing in their own way.
Yeah. Hey, you're no stranger to the PA1 book, because for folks who may not be aware, this is the second time that Will has been awarded the PA1 book. He did a book called What a Treasure in 2010. And we don't have a lot of time left, but I just, out of curiosity, Will, I noticed that you use the bear and the mole in particular in a lot of your books. And for instance, with Kite Day and What a Treasure, the mole is one of the predominant figures. How did that come about?
Well, it was my son's interest when he was a child. He fell in love with the book before he was 3 years old. He loved being read a book by Russell and Lillian Hoban, which was called The Mole Family Christmas. No one can pick out our favorite piece of music, and no one can pick out our favorite book. It's one of the things that when we read widely or listen widely, we're the ones we listen to again and again denote our own special interest. Well, he was interested in The Mole Family Christmas, and that book had many more words than he could read himself. It was way beyond, but not beyond his listening level, but way beyond his reading level. But we read it again and again, and he role-played that. He role-played being a mole, and it was fun. And I did a picture for him for his birthday when he turned 3. I did a portrait, and the portrait I did of him was as a mole. And it was because when I was a child, I thought if I could be anything when I grew up, I wanted to be a fire truck. and when I told that to an adult, they said, "You mean a firefighter?" I said, "No, I want to be a truck." And this was before I was in school as well. And it's because I've been reading the Virginia Lee Burton books about, Mike Milligan and his steam shovel Mary Ann, and Maybelle and the Big Snow, or Katie and the Big Snow, Maybelle the cable car.
That's a great story, Will. Well, we're actually just about out of time. I know we could continue this program forever, but I just wanted to repeat that the 2016 one book is Kite Day. Go out and get it from your library or from wherever you get your children's books. The author is Will Hillenbrand, who is my guest. And of course, for more information, you can go on Will's website at www.willhillenbrand.com, or for more information on the PA1 book program, it's www.pa1book.com. Thanks so much for being on the program, Will. We really appreciate it.
Well, John, it's been my pleasure, and Joe, thank you for having me. It's been a delight.
Thank you. That's our program for today. We'll be back in 2 weeks at this same time. In the meantime, you can go online to learn more at papromiseforchildren.com. For John Posa and the Northwest Regional Key Program for Quality Early Learning, I'm Joe Taylor. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.